Welcome, everyone. This is the Wednesday, January 9th meeting of the Evanston Plan Commission. Can we have a roll call for the quorum?
Commissioner Draper? Here. Commissioner Dubin? Commissioner Goddard?
Here.
Commissioner Halleck? Commissioner Isaac?
Here.
Commissioner Pagotzi?
Here.
And Chair Lewis.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, we have a quorum. So we are here for a continued meeting of the application 18 PLND 0053 for a planned development at 1714 through 1720 Chicago Avenue. Just a few things before we start. First of all, we have received a petition regarding the matter, and staff will be reviewing that. Second, I'd like to talk a little bit about how the proceeding will go today. We're going to open things up for public comment first. If you're going to speak, you should have signed up on the list that's outside. We'll be calling people in order that they signed up. We request that you limit your comments to 2 minutes. We've got, I'm going to assume, quite a lot of people speaking today. Also, if you hear someone before you makes the point that you're making, you're welcome to come up, but please just don't repeat that. If you can just say, I affirm what they said before, so we can keep things rolling along. Also, I think everyone who was sworn in last meeting is still sworn in. If you're not, if you were not sworn in, can I have everyone raise their hand if you're going to speak and say, I promise to tell the truth? Okay, you're sworn in. Great. All right. Let's see. So the Evanston Plan Commission is a recommending body. We have no final say in this matter. We recommend to the village board, and we can either recommend to approve. We've got three choices: recommend to approve with any modifications that we see, or recommend to deny the application. So have I missed anything? Anyone think I've missed anything? All right. So with that, we would normally ask that the petitioner give a presentation or present any new information. They gave their presentation at the previous meeting, so they're going to waive their rights to that right now. So I will give a little statement that they are petitioning to construct a 13-story office building, which they're seeking a map amendment to the zoning ordinance from a currently R6 zoning to a D3 downtown core development district, and then subsequent to that, approval of their plan development with certain allowances. So, do we have the map, the speakers? So I'm going to open this up for public comment. All right. So when you come up, if you're going to speak, can you come up to the microphone and then state your name and address and speak into the microphone for the record. All right. So and please, my apologies ahead of time if I don't pronounce your name correctly. Marcia Kerr, please. Marcia. There we go. 1 for 1.
Okay, my name's Marcia Kerr. I'm a condo owner at 1738 Chicago Avenue in Evanston. I attended the meeting in December and requested a continuance so that I could discuss the proposed project with other owners at 1738. I've circulated a petition in opposition to zoning amendment for a proposed office building at 1714 to 1720 Chicago Avenue. I have signatures from over 60% of the owners at 1738. The concerns: an increase in vehicular traffic in a narrow alley that will negatively impact existing vehicle and pedestrian traffic, extending from Church Street to Clark Street, including commuters, day-long truck traffic, and deliveries. Safety is also a great concern. Also, there are currently 4 garages, plus several spaces in the alley behind the WTCU historic buildings on Chicago Avenue. We believe that the number of people who will work in the proposed building will cause traffic backups on Church, Chicago, and Clark, and the alley trying to enter the alley or leave it. We are very concerned with the size and bulk of the proposed design of this building, and there is concern regarding possible negative impact on property values in the immediate area. Many believe that the proposed building is incompatible with the Women's Club building, residential, and historic structures in the immediate area. We are also concerned about the great possibility of damage to the historic buildings during construction. Loss of parking. The developer looked at the parking lot, the metered surface lot, for one day and concluded that the day was not fully used. Last Saturday, I walked down the alley to a restaurant at about 3 p.m. The lot was nearly full. I believe, a study over the course of several days would show the use of that parking lot more accurately. The lot is being used and probably generates, I'd imagine, a significant revenue for the city. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Kevin Russell, please.
Good evening. Yes, I'm Kevin Russell, as you stated. Actually, I live right next door to Marcia, the same building. My wife and I moved in a couple of years ago. One of the reasons we moved in is we face north, and that's a beautiful view. It was just the greatest selling point. But because we face north, I notice traffic, the fact that Clark is a truck route, and the fact that there are, I don't know how many hundreds of students go by those corners in the same hours these 100 to 200 additional cars in the neighborhood are going to be going through. So I think there's a danger there that I don't know if anyone did a foot traffic count to see what goes by the corner. Maybe the developer did. Did anybody?
Foot traffic count? I don't know.
Students.
I'm not sure. Is there such a thing?
Well, somebody could stand there and, make tick
there's-
marks as people went by. And I think that's a serious concern. Again, because of the fact we're at Clark and Chicago, we see an incredible amount of students going up to Northwestern. Marcia mentioned the number of cars. I think, again, 100 to 200 cars in that block between the hours of probably 7 and 9 and 4 and 6 every day is going to make it very, very crowded. Finally, I just had one question to be objective about it. What are the projected property tax revenues from this building?
All right, that's noted. So we'll let the petitioner respond to questions and things at the end.
He will respond to that tonight?
If they can, yes. So,
I'm sorry, I would have thought that they would know that, and you would know
well,
that.
but I would like to go through the comments and then give them a chance to
Okay.
address everything at one time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Melanie Cody, is it? All right, hi.
Thank you very much. I am the current president of the Women's Club of Evanston, and I am here on behalf of the club to make a statement of opposition to the, I'm going to call it the library lot development, parking lot development. We, the board, the leadership council, the membership, opposes the Evanston Public Library parking lot development. We have two main concerns. One is damage to our historic clubhouse, and the second is loss of private event income. The damage to the historic clubhouse is really a huge concern. We want to continue our heritage of giving back to the community for many years, and our clubhouse is integral to this mission. It's our home, it's our command center, it's where our membership mobilizes to address critical issues facing the most vulnerable in our community. We give, we serve, we celebrate our accomplishments at our clubhouse. And we are unique, really, in the area that we have a dedicated gathering place, and hence we are advocates for our clubhouse. We're not naive. We know that Evanston's in dire financial straits and needs to expand the tax base. But this proposed building is not the right structure for that parcel. We repeat, we really do not want to be harmed structurally and financially. We have contributed almost $2 million to the community over the past decade and over 15,000 volunteer hours every year. We are consistent and steadfast in making a difference in our community. Construction-related damage to our clubhouse will result in costly and time-consuming legal wrangling, and not to mention irreparable harm to a historic Evanston landmark. And private events, just for your own, they fund the expenses associated with the maintenance and operation of our 107-year-old historic clubhouse. We're very concerned that construction issues will drive away private events and put the club in a vulnerable financial position. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, Lenore Weissman, please.
For Lenore, who is in California.
And if you're speaking for an organization, we'll allow more time, but as an individual.
I'm speaking very briefly for her, and she did write a letter, but I did want to call attention to the points that are made because she is disabled, has a placard, uses the library parking lot both to go to the library, to go to the Carlson Building, which is a medical building primarily, and also to go to the Celtic Knot and other venues right there. And that lot is important to her. So this is what she said. The existing 3 parking spaces for the disabled in the library parking lot entered from Church Street are conveniently and safely located in the first 3 spaces of each of the first 3 rows of the lot, directly across from the sidewalk east of the library and across the street from medical and dental offices in 636 Church Street, restaurants and other businesses. Removing these spaces from use reduces the accessible parking in the street and lot adjacent to the library by half, from 6 spaces, she's including the ones on the street, to 3. How fully does the proposed building meet the requirements for replacing these spaces? The 3 replacement parking spaces for the disabled in the proposed building are not well located for community members. The plan would require a disabled person to drive into the alley, make a sharp right turn into the large office building, then make a sharp left turn, proceed to the first level parking on the far north side of the building, and access one of 2 spaces for the disabled. If those spaces were occupied, the person who would have to reverse course to go to the ramp, which is immediately in front of the entry area, to go to the ramp to the second level, where there will be 1 additional disabled park space available for the public. There are spaces also on the 3rd and 4th floor, but those are for the owners of the building. I mean, the members of the building, except after business hours. And this replacement accessible parking requires the disabled user to go through the lobby of the proposed building, exit mid-block on Chicago Avenue, and go south and west to reach the intended destination. So in fact, and I won't go to the second part of her note, but in fact, what that does is she says, in fact, the parking for the disabled in the proposed building is only appropriate for someone with business in 1714, 1720 Chicago Avenue. And then she points out also that the number of replacement spaces is 5. I mean, the number of spaces for the disabled is 5, where a building of that size requires 207 of 223 parking spaces, and that although renting from the city in the municipal lot works for people who are not disabled, going to the municipal lot, going upstairs, exiting, coming out on Church Street, and then coming back up to the building or to the other locations is not a feasible thing.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Joan? Oh, yeah, okay. You again.
Okay. There are two different issues. The first one is a question which I have for the developer because the marketing study, the one-page marketing overview is, well, first of all, whether that is the intended to be the marketing feasibility study is required by the ordinance, and secondly, because it's dated in January for the first quarter of 2018, whether that marketing feasibility overview has been updated, even the one page that there was from then. So that's, and then the comment. The comment I wanted to make is on the issue of D3. Or the conversion from R6 to D3. And again, I sent a letter to you all in December, and I hope that you had an opportunity to read it. And so I don't want to reiterate all of the things that are there, but just prior to your meeting, I submitted that letter and pointed out that effectively this is spot zoning. This is 2 lots in a residential neighborhood being rezoned as D3, which is the most intense zoning in the city code, and it is for the purpose of building this 167-foot office tower, referred to in the letter with the marketing study as your office tower. Not our word to use tower, but that's the word that they used. It's not, and so I made the point. A lot of points in my letter, which I won't go into again, but the main points are that the rezoning from R6 to D3 would violate the good zoning practice and offend all 4 of the standards that are set forth in the Evanston Zoning Code. It's not consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Comprehensive General Plan. It's not compatible with the overall character of the existing development in the vicinity of the subject property. It has an adverse effect on the adjacent properties, both economic and cultural, as attested to by the statements of the Francis Willard people and the Women's Club. And it is as testified to by the Evanston Public Library at the Dapper, and I'm sure that they will say something further. And in the past month, this has been a subject of great community interest, as you may perceive from the community interest that's here. And so owners representing more than 30% of the parcels, you referenced this petition. Mm-hmm. Well, what the subject of the petition is, which you did not mention, and therefore I'd like to make clear, is that it is to oppose the rezoning of, and more than 30% of the people the owners of the parcels have signed a petition to oppose the rezoning from D3 from R6 to D3. And because of that, the code of the City of Evanston provides that, assuming that those signatures all survive, that the code will require the City Council in rezoning to vote by a 3/4 margin, which when you can't take 3/4 of 9, it is 7 that they will have to get. So that was the importance of it, and that was the reason the neighbors have worked so hard to get those signatures over the past month.
Okay.
Thank you.
You very much. All right. Marjorie Rogesner? Pretty good, huh? I thought I was in trouble.
I've never done this before, so I'm a little nervous. I'm not here with any particular organization. I'm just here for myself and my family and the people that live at Evanston. There has been, as far as I can tell, I'm a pretty active person in terms of what's going on in the city and certainly in politics of any kind. There has been, as far as I could tell, almost no publicity about this building. I've asked at least 10 people that I know, I counted them, at what they feel about this experience. None of them knew anything about it. The Evanston, the mail that you get, the email that comes from Evanston talks about beach openings and the rain and the contest winners, nothing about any parking lot renovation, devastation. The roundtable has some information, but it doesn't come to the condos. At least it doesn't come to my condo. So I have no way, people would have no way of knowing about this. Secondly, I've heard all kinds of, I was at the last Alderman meeting, and there was a lot of talk about the construction, that the person was there. I have heard nothing about the interim during the construction. Where will there be parking during the construction? Where will people be able to go? How will they be able to walk during the construction? If I have, and have you advertised this with, and especially this relates to the interim issue, has any information, publicity gone to the preschools? Has any information about this gone to the elementary schools? Has any of the information gone to the high schools about this construction? It's going to affect especially families, people with young children. Have you ever tried walking from the big garage down, especially in the snow? Have you tried walking in construction with strollers? So I think people need to know about this. My husband would have serious trouble who walks with a cane. We go to the library regularly for meetings, especially in the evenings. He would have serious trouble walking from the description that Joan just gave about how you get out of the handicap spaces or even in the garage of that building. And I was also, the last thing is that I've been told by a librarian that the libraries are funded through circulation. This library is going to lose circulation by people not going to the libraries. I now, in fact, I go to Wilmette more often than I come to the Evanston one because of the parking and because it's easier to access Wilmette's library. It's going to be impossible to access the library and the restaurants. If you want to see businesses go out of business, watch what happens to those restaurants on Church Street because people park in that lot. And during the construction and afterwards, there's not going to be any.
Okay, thank you. Glenn,
Come on, you did it last time.
oh, that's right, yes.
Medea.
Medea. how
I'm
are
Glenn
you?
Medea. I live at 1401 Davis Street. I'm Executive Director of the Center for Women's History and Leadership, which operates the Frances Willard House Museum and the Frances Willard Memorial Library and Archives. On behalf of the WCTU, I'm also the WCTU Site Manager for the properties, and I'm the head gardener. Okay, 3 concerns. I did send this to you earlier, so I'm not going to go through all of this. First concern is property security. We have a historic landscaping plan that includes a green fence. We're trying to prevent people from going through from the parking lot through our property to get to wherever they're trying to get to. That's a routine occurrence today. We had talked to the developers about possibly working with us on the landscaping on the green fence side. We talked about extending a fence from our property all the way to their building so that people could not traverse on the north side from the alley to Chicago Avenue. We talked about all that, and nothing is here. Okay, second concern is water runoff protection. We are lower than the library parking lot, and we routinely get flooding happening on our property. I can't see how having a 13-story building is going to help that situation. So I don't know if there is any information about how runoff is going to be handled with the building, but it would be appreciated. The final concern is the transition zone, and we're talking really about the trees. The fact that the 13-story building is going to put most of our property in complete shade for most of the year, okay? So this thing moves. So when you look at the building plans, the renderings just show an open swath on that north, and then sometimes it shows trees on our property. All the trees are on our property, and sometimes it doesn't show anything. So we're not quite sure what they say they're going to do, but the tree protection plan that they talk about, they indicated in the previous Plan Commission meeting that it's still a draft. They're going to be hiring an arborist. I'm using their words, we have engaged an arborist to create a report, okay? We recognize this construction will impact some of the existing trees, okay? We would work with the city to protect and save as many existing trees as is feasible, develop a replacement strategy. There's no mention of working with the neighbor, and this strategy may involve replacing trees on adjacent properties or parkways. So I'd like to point out now that the law governing protection of trees of neighbors in Illinois is in Illinois Statutes, Chapter 740, Civil Liabilities 185/2, treble damages. Any party found to have intentionally cut or knowingly caused to be cut any timber or tree which he did not have full legal right to cut or cause to be cut shall pay the owner of the timber or trees 3 times its stumpage value. Stumpage value is defined as the price that a firm would pay for harvesting the timber, usually $500 to $2,500 per tree. However, ornamental or landmark trees can have a value between $20,000 and $60,000. That's all in the statute, okay? There are 11 ornamental or historic trees affected by the building. So if this building goes forward, we request an irrevocable written agreement in perpetuity from the developers for the payment of any of all costs incurred by us for the removal of all these trees. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Virginia Beatty, please. Virginia Beatty? No, Beatty?
She doesn't hear very well.
Okay. Virginia? Virginia? Are you Virginia? Yes. Come on up.
My ears are as old as I am.
Yeah. It's an amazing fact.
My name is Virginia Beatty. I'm an Evanstonian by choice, and I've lived at 1509 Forest Avenue since 1963. And I am very happy to have an opportunity to share some thoughts with all of you. My biggest concern is about the parking spaces and the construction that brings entrance to the underground parking in the Northwestern University housing and the public library to the same point that the parking is going to be entering the proposed building. Secondly, I'm concerned about the size, the bulk of the building, which is about 4 times higher than the average height of the other buildings on the west side of the 1700 block of Chicago Avenue. Also, the two-way alley that goes through, connecting the loading docks and all that sort of thing, is only 20 feet wide, and that's not really good for two-way traffic in a very congested area. Also, this tall building has a National Historic Monument on either side of it, which are both sort of the work of women, and women in Evanston have been very important for over 200 years. And also, these buildings are quite fragile. We know what happened when they built the 9-story apartment building at the end of the block. So I'd like to suggest that maybe we put some time, money, effort, and all that sort of thing into making Evanston a destination community. I thought the building was very nice. I read 208 pages of the 211 in that big document, but I don't think it goes right there. I also drew a picture, which I'll give to you people up in the front, that shows the size of the building in terms of the rest of the block. So I'd like to suggest that we start putting Evanston's women on the world map. 40 years ago, people came from all over the world to visit the place because of the women who were here and had been here. Let's invite people to come from all over the world to stop by and enjoy Evanston's history and hospitality, and then leave to tell the rest of the world about it. Let them come and enjoy it. And I would like to suggest to the people who drew up the lovely picture of the building and all the good information that they provided, that I thought they did an excellent job. I just don't think that the 13-story or however tall the building is going to be is quite the thing to do the very best for Evanston. I'd be happy to support that building anywhere else in town. No, don't say that. But a number of other places in our community. But let's do a little bit more thinking on all aspects that will make Evanston an even nicer place to live.
Okay.
I don't know how many.
Thank-
Would you be so kind to see to the copies? And this young lady, I don't want to read all of that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Beatty.
I think
Yes.
Evanston's a neat place to live, and I plan to stay here for, I hope, some time.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, that's a tough act to follow. So Sarah Shostak.
I am Sarah Shostak and always happy to follow Virginia. This is a welcome opportunity tonight to ask a question about something that's inconsistent within the proposal. There are, on page 68 in the list of public benefits, the developers say that they would be creating 544 permanent jobs in the area and 350 construction jobs. Then on page 71, we're told the project would create 225 construction jobs and bring 150 FTEs to the area. On page 75, in conclusion, it's asserted that the project will be leased to a creditworthy Fortune 500 firm that will, quote, bring many new FTEs to the area. I would like developers to tell us which is it of these three statements. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Leslie Slad or Shad?
Hi, I'm Leslie Shad. Thanks for allowing us to speak. I am with Bird Friendly Evanston, and I'm going to defer to my colleague. Thanks.
All right. Janet Seidel. Okay. Carl Klein? Oh, Janet. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All right.
Hi, my name is Janet Steidel. I live at 1401 Davis Street. I just have, it's kind of a question. In the traffic study, they did existing pedestrian and bike volumes, and that was their figure 4. So those are the existing ones. And then they also did a year 2023 total traffic volume projection. But that looks like it's just for vehicles, and it's not for pedestrian and bike volume. So when I looked at the rest of the numbers, I looked at there would be 544 employees, and there would be 91 specific on-site office parking spaces and 50 spaces for bikes. So that means there's 141 spaces for some kind of parkage in the building. But there are 544 projected employees. There will be, that leaves 403 employees who have to get to the building some way. I don't know. I think that probably ought to be projected out. That's a lot of people. I assume they would be walking through the alley because they'll be coming from public transportation just west of the site. I don't know many people who would walk around the building to go in the front, even though the front, you know, is where you would assume, but there are entrances from the alley to the building. So I really think in this case, because the alley is such a big concern, the safety, the volume, et cetera, that are projecting into 2023. If this building is built, how are those 403 people going to get to work? Thank you very much.
All right, now Carl Klein, please. Oh, he's not here? Okay, all right. Austin Scherer.
I'm Austin Scherer. I live at 1630 Chicago Avenue. I'm here to speak against the proposal. I think it's dangerous in the sense that the alleyways have blind turns, and the left-hand turn that has to be made off of Church is past the indentation for the drop-off of the library, past the book drop, and past the mailbox. Now, the mailbox could be reconfigured, but it'd be very difficult to reconfigure the other two. And frequently, even now, there's traffic problems with people in that fast left lane getting blocked behind the people who are stopping. So I think it's a very dangerous entrance into the building. And because of the Northwestern students who are going by and the kids who sometimes like to play in the alleys, I don't think it's a safe building. It is visually disproportionate, as others have spoken. The 13-story building will tower over the Willard Museum, and because it will deprive the museum of winter sunlight, it will actually deteriorate the building more quickly because it won't dry out enough without winter sunlight. And what happens to wood over a long period of time when it's wet, it becomes more mushy. So that's a real concern for the Willard. Those three beautiful Victorians in shadows most of the time will likely deteriorate. In Boston, a developer had to pay $3 million for a building that put some of the historic churches in the shadows, and they had to put $3 million into a restoration fund to preserve the building. The developers have said that they tried to make the building consistent by making color scheme of the bottom four floors consistent with the colors of the adjacent buildings, but it's a little bit like painting a blue and white stripe on the bottom of the Titanic and saying that it's consistent with neighboring sailboats. The building is really disproportionate and will make those smaller buildings look ridiculous. The other thing is the diagrams for the building, I agree, are very well done, but they're too spacious. They look like Evanston is in central Iowa. The roads are bigger than they are in reality. The grassy areas are bigger, and they just do not reflect the real situation. In summary, I'd say Evanston has a tradition of supporting young people and supporting education. In fact, it's nationally known as a great college town. This building, though well-intentioned, flies in the face of that tradition. It doesn't really respect the historical buildings. It's dangerous for students, dangerous for people using the library, and I urge you to reject it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
My name is Libby Hill. I live at 2715 Woodland, so that it is no place near this building. I'm representing Bird Friendly Evanston, and our interest is the fact that Evanston is part of the major flyway for birds, for migrating birds in the United States, part of the Mississippi Flyway, and as a result, birds that fly over Evanston are in danger one way or the other by glass, a lot of glass buildings and a lot of tall buildings. Okay, so Bird Friendly Evanston commends the efforts of the architect to design the building mindful of the safety of the millions of birds that migrate over Evanston in spring and fall. The lower 4 floors have non-reflective, non-transparent glass, and the terrace glass walls have patterned glass. Regarding the terrace, the trees are placed close to the glass, which minimizes the likelihood of a bird flying from the trees, being frightened and so on, and then striking the glasses and being mortally hurt. Should a future modification of the trees that are on that terrace occur, either they die or be moved or removed, then the patterned glass that they've designed into the terrace will continue to provide bird safety. Our only concern is the lobby, which is currently designed with clear glass, and we recommend that patterned glass would be considered as it's part of the lower floors, and the lower 4 floors are the ones that they're planning to treat. Bird Friendly Evanston thanks the architects for working with us and for their use of LEED 55 pilot program for designing a building with concern for the future of migratory birds. Where a rating of 15 on the LEED scale is optimal, they've actually achieved a 17.8 rating, which is pretty good. So thank you very much for your attention, and I can leave you with...
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Let's be entered into the record, I guess. All right, Vicki Burke, please.
Good evening. I'm Vicki Burke. I live at 1409 Rosalie Street. I have a question for you. Sarah Ward, who's the national president of the WCTU, was planning to drive up from the Indianapolis area, and she had a last-minute medical issue and couldn't drive up. So she sent me via email a part of a statement that she was planning to say. So can I have a twofer? One for her, because I'm actually the chair of the Center for Women's History and Leadership, and I'm authorized to...
Speaking officially for them?
I'm speaking officially, reading a statement from Sarah, and then I have some questions for the developer myself.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Thank you. I'm going to shorten it a little bit, but to follow up on Virginia's part about the women, the National WCTU is very proud of our historically significant Willard House and the surrounding buildings. No doubt you are aware that as part of the Chicago Tribune's celebration of Illinois Bicentennial, they offered a bucket list of 20 things every Illinoisan should see. The Willard House was ranked at number 2. They featured a large color photo of the Willard Den, and briefly listed the accomplishments of Frances Willard, the first and only woman to be honored in Statuary Hall in Washington, D.C. for over 50 years, the only one for that time. For the past 2.5 years, we have opposed the erection of a building next to our property, which not only would detract from our historical site, but would also be a danger to those traveling in the adjacent alley. In all of that time, I have never been contacted by any city official. I am grateful that the WCTU has been represented by Glenn Medea, Executive Director of the Center for Women's History and Leadership, which is managing our properties, and by Vicki Burke, Chair of the Center. But neither of them have been asked by any city official for any contact information. This would include Alderman Fisk and our city manager. Having just completed 3 years as president of my own town council, I understand the importance of speaking to property owners when there are matters of concern. I am usually in Evanston quarterly. At the last meeting, the developer had about the project with the officers of the Women's Club. I was just down the block at 1730 Chicago Avenue, but received no invitation to meet. She wanted that on record. Okay. So, my questions. Can we get clarification on whether or not there will be a scale model of the proposed building, including the existing buildings on the block bounded by Clark Chicago Church in Orrington? And if so, we've been asking for this for 2.5 years, by the way. If so, can we request the model be on public display at the Evanston Public Library for the benefit of the public? In reference to public benefit, which is now number 10 instead of number 1, which it was originally, the ETHS student pilot internship. Since my background is education, I was particularly pleased by that public benefit, but I have lots of questions about it. And in other words, will the developer be hiring a curriculum specialist to develop the program? Can we get information on the syllabus for the program? Will the developer be underwriting any ETHS staff time for oversight and administration of this program? Will there be any type of certification for the students upon completion of this program? Can we get clarification on the possible longevity and sustainability of this internship? Is the intent that this can be used by ETHS and the city with future developers? I mean, I think it's an excellent idea, but I know that with education, you can't just say, oh, we're going to do this and just bring the kids on over and we'll help them out. So I would love to see something like that happen, but I think we need to be, can't be done by the seat of the pants sort of thing. And in reference to public benefit number 11, now, it says, create a public/private bike room. Can we get clarification on exactly what is meant by use by immediate public/501c3 employees? Because the only 501c3 entities that are immediate to that property are the Women's Club, of which I'm a past president, and the Willard property. The Women's Club has 2 full-time employees. I think the property and the house is big enough to hold their bikes. The Willard House has very part-time employees, and we got parking spaces, and we've got a pretty big lot. So I think we got plenty of space to handle any kind of parking trucks. So I don't see that. That's not a public benefit because it's specific to those 2 entities, and it actually is no benefit to us whatsoever because we don't need that. So I question the legitimacy of that public benefit on the list. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Ben Shapiro, please.
Good evening again, Chair, Commissioners. I'm Ben Shapiro. I live at 1127 Dewey Avenue. I am also President of the Library Board for the Evanston Public Library. You've heard a number of really good comments tonight. I'm going to give you a slightly different one. Our big concern, after some of the things I mentioned last month, is parking. We see an average of 1,700 people every day at the public library, and we're open 7 days a week. That's everyone from infants to seniors, people by car, people by bicycle. My concern directly comes out of the comments made during the developer's presentation last month, where they clearly stated they expect the shortfall in parking availability based on their building will be taken up by the, quote, empty Evanston Public Library parking garage in the basement. That lot is key to our ability to provide services to our public. We do a large number of programs, and having that building filled then, that space then filled by overflow from this building would seriously negatively impact our ability to provide services to our public, services that they have paid for by taxpayers. And as much as I would love to think that we are funded by circulation, far, far, far from that. So this has a real concern for me in that we could not be available for people on days like today, where we're looking at 20s, and people have to come with their infants for a program, or seniors who are coming for tax help, or for help with the navigators for Obamacare, et cetera, would not be able to find close-in parking. Additionally, we're concerned about the snow removal plan, and I am, as a cyclist, concerned about the blind dogleg for that alley that goes north-south. And I know my facility manager is gravely concerned about people using the north side driveway for our parking garage as a cut-through to the parking in this building. There is, exit out of that space does not have terribly great sight lines, so we're concerned about that as well. Those are grave things for us. So as proposed, this building would directly impact in a negative way our ability to serve the public who is paying for our services and who has demonstrated a great joy in using those services. So I would respectfully submit that you request that you not approve this building as currently proposed, that the parking issue is a grave one for us and impacts our ability to serve the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Bruce Greerbach? Did I get that?
I've heard worse.
All right.
My name is Bruce Annenbach. I'm a 42-year resident of this great town. Can't believe I can say that. I'd like to just focus on 3 absolute non-negotiable requirements, non-starters that are completely unacceptable and not permitted under the executed and now extended purchase and sale agreement. First, the building height by agreement is limited to 11 stories. Proposal before you is 13. This is not permitted under the agreement and cannot be allowed. It has been on the table and known since day one and ignored by this developer over the entire time. Parenthetically, any pleas by the developer that the cost of funds have increased over time is of no concern. It being completely his responsibility, he could have insured himself against such increases. Apparently, he chose not to. Second, the number of parking spaces in the current surface lot, which are open 24/7, is 75 spaces. The purchase and sale agreement requires that the same number of public spaces be provided in the project. The proposal before you has 22 such spaces. This is not permitted under the agreement and cannot be allowed. It has been on the table and known since day one and ignored by the developer over the entire time. Third, there is no provision for the taking of alley right-of-way in the purchase and sale agreement. This proposal before you takes a critical part of this already quirky, substandard, and difficult to maneuver right-of-way, creating what amounts to a serious fire and safety hazard, as well as further complicating general car, as well as a very significant amount of pedestrian traffic. This is not permitted under the agreement and cannot be allowed. It has been on the table and known since the very first DAPR meeting and has been ignored by the developer. With regard to the fire department's rather lukewarm acceptance letter, I would offer that the DAPR, which includes fire department representation, unanimous rejection should hold sway. Also give some thought about what would happen if trucks were in both this project's and the library's loading docks. They'd be facing each other and no one would be able to get through that alley in either direction. Additionally, simply as an egregious case of spot zoning, this proposal should be denied. As this project has advanced, I do not feel the developer has proactively moved through the process or made a good faith effort by ignoring fundamental and non-negotiable requirements on building height, public parking, right-of-way, which have been on the table for a long time, thereby making this project automatically unacceptable. I would propose to say stop, the party's over. Should the developer get religion, he can return with a new plan. DAPR has unanimously and rightfully rejected this proposal. The Plan Commission should as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I probably did this out of order, and I should have made available to speak first people who had signed up and did not speak in the previous hearing. So I'm going to ask if Kim Stanton wishes to speak. I apologize. I should have probably started with you, but yeah.
Excuse me. I'm Kim Stanton, incoming president for the Women's Club of Evanston. I really don't have anything different to say besides what Melanie Cody had said, but I want to just, and I don't know if this is appropriate, but set the record straight. The Women's Club has been accused of signing an agreement, being in agreement. We have been in talks with the developer for 2.5, 3 years. and there has not been an agreement. But we did get one at last minute today that was completely inappropriate, and the timing is off, and also the content. So we are, again, opposed to this project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chava Wee? She's not. Hava Wee, okay. Jack Weiss, I don't believe. Jack Weiss, all right. Glenn Medea. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I missed my checks. Yes. How about Ann Branning? Okay. And did I miss this one? No, I don't think so. Lucia Gertie? Gertie? Oh, you did. You sure you didn't ask questions? Because you have the right to make a statement. All right. Great. Very good. So, yes.
May I just read a correction in the record?
Please do, Alderman. Please come to the front.
Good evening, everybody. It's Judy Fisk, First Ward Alderman. I just wanted to correct the record. Someone had mentioned that Sarah Ward had not received any communication from me as Alderman or from the city. This is a letter sent from Sarah Ward to the mayor and city manager and myself on July 16th. Dear Mr. Bobkowitz, in September of 2016, I sent you a letter asking that all communications regarding the library parking lot be directly sent to Vicki Burke and Glenn Medea, who I designated to represent me and the WCTU in all discussions regarding the WCTU properties. It is now July of 2018, and I understand from them that the developers are proceeding through the city's plan development process. This letter is to formally reiterate my designation of Ms. Burke and Mr. Medea as representing me and the WCTU in all proceedings. Vicki Burke is the chair of the Board of Trustees of the Center for Women's History and Leadership, located at the WCTU properties, and has the management oversight of said properties. She also chairs the center's Willard House Museum Council, which manages our museum. She lives in Evanston and can be reached at the following phone number. Glenn Medea is the executive director of the Center for Women's History and Leadership and the WCTU property site manager. He also lives in Evanston and can be reached at the following telephone number. Please share this letter of designation to the appropriate city staff. Regards, Sarah Ward, President, National Women's Christian Temperance Union. And as I said, that was copied to both the mayor and myself. There have been meetings with Ms. Burke and Mr. Medea. They have been included in the process all along, and I just wanted to make the committee aware of that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, at this time, we'll call the public statements at an end and give the petitioner a chance to respond or to even cross-examination, ask questions of anyone who has spoken today.
All right. Well, so, I'm not sure I'll have to get that draconian, but
yeah, all right.
Let me go through a few of the things, and maybe this will all, some of the things I have here might help answer some of the concerns that the community has. I just want to go through remind people that we did have the fire department come and actually do tests in this alley, and we actually used the recommendation that we scale our building back to make that extra wide alley. And I also want to mention that this alley is exactly the same width as all the alleys in Evanston. So when people say it's narrow, it actually is no more narrow than any other alley. I just want to make sure that people are getting the right information, and I want to make that clear. These turning radiuses that we've had our engineer do, we had them do truck radiuses because we thought that was obviously the most important thing, but there was concern from the community about how do cars navigate, and we have these diagrams now that show that they navigate very well. And I just want to also mention that these vehicles that we're showing are 19-foot long Chevy Suburbans. So these are not Licars or Fiats. They are like full-on gigantic vehicles that we hope people no longer buy. We're also proposing to put a stop sign there at the corner where the university building is for safety. We are also as you know, we're putting a new marked crosswalk. Right now, there is no crosswalk, and there is no safe way for anybody, including people in wheelchairs, to get from the parking lot that's there now to the library. So we're hoping to improve upon that. There'll be a sidewalk, there'll be signage, there'll be a crosswalk, and maybe even there's some kind of special lighting there would make sense, I think. As far as snow removal, everyone's very worried about snow removal. I think I really should stop and think about this three-dimensionally. All the snow that used to fall on the surface parking lot will now fall on the roof of our building. So basically, we're going to be collecting all that snow ourselves. It will melt, it will be drained, and there's not going to be a big worry about that in my mind. And not to say that we don't want to be involved in like being part of a coalition of different landowners to make sure that the alley is always clear, because I think that makes perfect sense, and that we're totally willing to do that. We also talked about doing signage so that people know if they have to go to a different garage, or if it's filled up. We hope it will never be filled, but if there's empty spaces, for instance, in the basement of the library, which we're finding out there's actually quite a few empty spaces at times. So I think that makes a great deal of sense, and the developers are willing to spend some money to do that. We haven't really negotiated with the city exactly how that works, so I don't want to be ethereal about that, but it is something that's totally on our radar and something we're committed to. I also want to remind people that there's 112 parking spaces that's available to the public after 5 p.m. and on weekends, and that is when the demand is greatest. We're really basically, and if you add the 34 spaces underneath the library, that's a total of 146 spaces after 5 o'clock and on weekends, instead of the 108 or that we have now. So we're actually increasing the ability for people to come and use the restaurants, use the library. So it's actually kind of counterintuitive, but it's really, that's the truth. That's the way it works. There would be 91 parking spaces for office workers, okay, on a typical day, 9 to 5. But so if up to 38, and I think, Peter, you asked about this, you said, what if people stay late to work? People stay late to work all the time. So we realized that as a count, up to 38 office workers can actually stay after and work till however long. That's roughly 40% of the occupancy of people that would park there from the building. 40% of those people can park there, and that would still keep the number of parking spaces at 108, which it presently is right now, if you combine the surface lot and underneath the library. The alley width we talked about. We're also talking about having a full-time security person in the garage, and our developers is committed to that idea, and I think it's really important. There is no security out in that parking lot right now. It's really poorly lit, and I've been a member of this community for 30 years. I've taken my kids to that library many times in that lot, and that is a pretty scary, dark lot. But I hope with more lighting and a personnel there, that'd be pretty good. People are talking about how to get into the building, and people are going to be cutting through the alley. First of all, as a pedestrian, I don't like to go through alleys. I don't want to go through an alley. I want to go the normal route. There is no shortcut going to get to our building to go through the alley. It's geometrically exactly the same number of feet. It's either you go straight to the corner and take a left and go into the lobby of our building, or you go, I guess, to the alley and then go down the sidewalk to but it's exactly the same number of steps. So I would think that most people would elect just to walk on a beautiful wide sidewalk as opposed to going through an alley, but I can't guarantee that. But that's our intent, is to make a really beautiful entrance on Chicago Avenue so people will want to use it. That's where they have to go. They can't enter the building from the garage. Maybe they can, but I'm not sure why anybody would want to. As far as not only, I think somebody brought up that we only counted one day of monitored one day of parking counts. Actually, we counted 4 days, and I have the figures here. And those 4 days all show sort of the same pattern, that during the days on March 14th, August 16th, September 24th, at 2 different times on September 24th, morning and then evening, we counted cars and we came up with the same figures pretty much every time, that the surface lot is underutilized, and then that the lot underneath the library is underutilized. And that's why we elected not to put 74 spaces back in the garage. And the other reason, and we've gone over this before, and I don't want to go over old territory, is that we didn't want to build an 8-story tall parking garage and then put another building on top of it. It's just, to us, architecturally, everything about it seemed like a really terrible idea, and that's sort of why. Plus, we didn't want a tall base because we wanted the base to be commensurate with the other scale, the buildings on the block. That was our intent, just to make that clear. Someone else said, we don't want hundreds, there's going to be 200 more cars in the alley. No, there's actually going to be 38 more cars. That is the exact number of extra cars beyond what is there now. There are 38 more cars over the course of a day. So I don't know, do the math, that's like 4 cars an hour or something. The taxes, property taxes on the building are going to exceed $1 million a year. If I could talk about the damage to the clubhouse, I am a preservation architect. I've been a preservation architect for pretty much my whole career. My firm has won, I'm humble brag here, my firm has won more preservation awards at the City of Evanston than any other architect in the history of Evanston. So we are really concerned about the Francis Willard House and the Mayo House next door. I will say, as far as building next to historic structures, they just built a Hyatt next to the Chalmont, which is a historic building, right up to it. They do this all the time in Europe, by the way, and they do it all over the world. We're almost 90 feet from the Willard House, and we're like 60 feet from the Mayo Building, the Women's Club. So to me, I am not worried that those buildings are going to be somehow in danger. I think I don't want to use the word ludicrous because that sounds really mean, but when you see buildings going up in every city in the world that are cheek to jowl with other historic buildings and nothing happens, or very rarely happens if you do it right, in the case of the Hyatt that went right next to the Chalmont, I mean, they have a party wall. I mean, they're right up against each other. But the city was very good. They came out and they monitored the foundations and made sure that everything was being done properly, and that Sandeep at his wine shop was safe, and that his stuff was safe, and it actually worked out very well. So I'm not saying it always works out great. I'm just saying most of the time it can definitely be dealt with. And I also want to mention that we have promised before on several occasions to both organizations that we would put seismic monitoring equipment on their site just to make sure and doubly sure that they're not experiencing any sort of distress from when we first start putting foundations in. To get to the market feasibility, someone was asking about, well, how do you know that we're going to have, well, what's your market feasibility? Well, market feasibility is based on the City of Evanston's direct edict that to develop the site, we had to make it a Class A office building. So this is not something we just came up with out of the blue. This is something the city wants and actually required. So I just want to also make that clear. So some of the trees, they're shared, and when I say shared, I think Glenn's correct. I mean, they actually, if you want to say the center line of the trunk of the tree is truly, most of them are on the Francis Willard site. Even though the root balls and the canopies and stuff are shared, I guess legally you would say that those trees are on their site. Obviously, we're trying to save as many as we can, but if we can't, what we'd like to do is propose planting 4 new 10-inch caliper, 35-foot tall specimens on the public parkway to start with. And then we're also, of course, putting trees on our terraces. There's a lot of trees on our terraces, so it's that's the other kind of positive we see. But we'd also like to offer putting a couple more 10-inch caliper, 35-foot tall specimens on the Willard property. If that's something that they want us to do, we're more than willing to do that. So let me go right now. Sorry. The last thing I want to talk about is scale. Yes, this building is taller, certainly, obviously, than the Women's Club and the Willard houses. But I want you to keep in mind that the Whole Foods, for instance, here are the buildings that are right around us. Whole Foods, it's 25 stories. The Evanston Place Apartments across the street, right across the street, is 10 stories. The new building that's going to go on the Found lot, and that hasn't been approved, the Found restaurant site, is going to be 19 stories. The condominium building that's right next to the Willard property is 8 stories. The McManus Hall behind us is 9 stories. The Carlson building is 9 stories. Orrington is 11 stories. And our proposed project is 13 stories. So we really do feel, if you look at the whole block and not just this myopic sort of view of just this one thing, I think you have to look at the entire community of buildings and not just this one thing. And I also want to make the point about zoning, is that even though it was always the intent of the city when they wanted to develop this lot and put the RFP out there, is that they knew, obviously, that if they wanted $5 million or $4 million for the lot, that they were not going to build a 2-story building there, that this was going to be some building of scale, and the zoning would obviously have to change as part of the plan development process. So going from a residential 6 to a D3 was always sort of unspoken, but in the cards. In fact, I think it's actually in some of the earlier sort of material from the city. And I just want to remind everybody that the D3 district is right across the alley. It's not like the D3 district is 5 blocks from us. It's literally on the center line of the alley behind our project. So I think it's not such a great leap to think that it might be better as a D3 zone than an R6, that's all. And the last thing I want to mention is someone said that our renderings were somehow misleading. I just want to make sure that you know that those renderings came directly from hardline drawings that are true to scale, and the renderings are a rendering program that we did not Photoshop anything or misinterpret, or I should misrepresent anything. All those views you see in our renderings are all true to scale and as close as you can get to a representative of what will look like in that medium. So,
All right, thank you. Sure. So at this time, I think I want to make it, open it up for questions either from commissioners or staff, if they wish, of either the developer or anyone who has testified. Commissioner Pagozzi.
Yeah, I had 2 questions. One was, how does one access the east terrace on the building? And then the second question is, why the dumpster that you're drawing is quite large.
Dumpster?
Yeah, and on your trash container on the back. And I'm wondering, as we are kind of sensitive to the setbacks and the area you're taking up, trying to be efficient as to maximize your parking and not to minimize the encroachment on your neighbors while maintaining your leasable square footage.
Yeah.
I get all of that.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that this plan as it's drawn is, this dumpster, it's over 40 yards.
I think you're talking about a loading dock, though, Andy.
It's drawn as a trash container. So maybe it is a loading dock.
That's our loading dock,
All right,
yeah.
that's the loading dock.
I'm sorry,
so-
yeah. If it wasn't noted that way, I'm sorry, but
right.
that's what it is, yeah.
Okay, but
Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to make our loading dock big enough. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to vacate that little triangle of the alley, is so that we could get that loading dock in that position, so that we could get all of our vehicles out of the alley pathway. That was our goal.
all right. And during
What was the first question? Sorry, Andy.
first question is, how do you access the east terrace?
If you look at the first leasable floor plan, from the elevator core, there are corridors that go out to those terraces, so that anybody that's in the building as a tenant can go out there and have lunch, for instance. They might have to have a
from the
key.
parking deck level.
Oh, the one from the parking deck level is inaccessible. The one that's facing the street
East,
is
right.
purely kind of a way to get a greenscape up there.
It's a faux.
Yeah, basically, it's access through the garage for like a maintenance person,
Okay.
but not for like people. I mean, we could do that. But I'm not sure they want to go through a garage to get through.
I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
what's drawn
Sure,
in
sure.
front of me. So in your loading dock, have you proved that you're able to get a semi-truck in and out?
Yeah, we have the diagrams that were in the earlier machination of those. We showed all the semi-trailers. In fact, I mean, we don't anticipate there being a semi-trailer coming into our dock, but you never know. So we wanted to look at the worst case scenario.
Okay.
We also have fire truck diagrams too, so we wanted to vet all of that.
No, I believe the fire truck diagram in the traffic study. It's all. I didn't see a diagram showing a truck of that.
The semi-trailers,
size
yeah.
getting in and out of that space.
So just to clarify, these rooftop terraces are only available to tenants of the building?
That's correct. Okay. Yep. And the east one is not terrace. And you know what? I mean, it's still a possibility that it could become accessible, but you'd have to go through a garage to get to it.
Other questions? So, well, Commissioner Draper, is that your light? Please.
Hi, I've got a question about the proposal you had about putting in 4 10-inch trees to save some of to give back for the ones that may be cut down.
Exactly.
So you propose putting them in the parkway. There's currently 4 existing trees in the parkway.
Yeah, they're really dinky, like sick-looking, tiny trees.
So your proposal would be to remove those trees.
We could take them and move them someplace else, and maybe over time they can get bigger. But and I don't want to sound like a critic of Evanston, but I'm a real tree lover, and I've put these size trees on my own property, and I put them in other projects too for clients because it's kind of an instant. I don't want to say a wow factor. That sounds so cheesy, but yeah, it's kind of sort of like instant green, instant canopy. I mean, you look at the Fountain Square where they put all those broomsticks up, and you see these poor people huddling on this tiny thing with 18 leaves trying to eat their lunch in the summer sun. I'm like, why didn't they put decent-sized trees there? They spent so much money. So we'd like to do that and put something that's really, really major, as big. You really can't transport anything bigger than a 10-inch caliper, and most arborists won't really guarantee that they would survive when they get bigger than that anyway. So,
Is there any been thought about how the building's going to be, the construction plan of how it's going to be constructed, and which way are they blocking off alley access for that to happen, or is it going to be coming from Chicago Avenue?
I think it's more. You want to talk about that?
Since they are going lot to lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few issues related, including questions about how parking is handled during that and how it affects the adjacent tenants, use of their facility for events and things like that, and so how to minimize disturbance.
Sure.
So, yeah.
One thing I learned while being in the city of Evanston is the city folks at DAPR are basically have a extensive construction management plan, and they'll tell me, and we'll meet with the neighbors on the logistics and where the porta potty goes and how traffic's going to be and what the construction site's going to look like and what the fence height's going to look like, and all of those determining factors will be brought in by the neighbors of both sides, and they'll have a copy and go through the construction management plan. While we were going and starting this process, it was interesting that's how. So I'm going to be told by the city of Evanston through their management, the pre-construction management plan of negotiating on how that's going to all work.
So you'll agree to the terms of a construction management plan?
I have to.
Yes, okay. All right.
While I'm up here, I think I need to address some of the questions that came up in public comments. So if you don't mind, give me 2 minutes.
Okay.
Just to Vicki Burke and I, we met 2.5 years ago. I apologize for the last meeting. I didn't know the president was in. I would have invited her to the meeting that was at the Women's Club. The 2 questions that she had were the internship that was brought about. Yes, she's in education. The Shelley Bates, that's the Career and Technical Education Department Chair. I'm allowing her to basically structure the internship, and she has to run it up the flagpole. But I would encourage Vicki, because she's an Evanstonian, I could set them up together, and they can work together on how that internship's going to be. As far as the public-private public benefit for the bikes, we didn't pull that out of a hat. We met with the Peter, the Evanston Bike Club president. He said, what I would do, because I ride my bike every day, even in the winter, is I would, if you'd like to, don't make it completely public, because you'll have homeless guys taking showers in your public bike room. He said, make it semi-public, and he said the only people that are going to use it would be any employees next door, the Francis Willard folks, or anybody working at the Women's Club and the 501c3 library. Those would be the only people that would use the bike room. So we took it upon ourselves to open up a number of bike slots for those people if they'd like to use it. The other question came up when the last meeting I had with the Women's Club, their attorney, it was very important. I don't want to ruin 100 years of history by doing a construction. I was told by the city, you can't, we're not making a precedent, but the idea of contingent business interruption insurance came up. So John Daly, one of their attorneys, went and said, well, I'm part of an insurance company. You can't do that. Well, I found an insurance company that can. So that was what the one, I sent that today, because it's an insurance company. They call it like a financial revenue bond, but it has a rider with contingent. It's a pretty exotic insurance policy. So when I left the Women's Club, they'd like some indemnification, and that's what I found. So that's what the letter that was sent to them. And Paul, anything else? I don't know. Any questions for you guys?
So, well, I'd like clarification, since about there was pointed out that there might be some discrepancy in the amount of full-time employees.
Oh, yeah, that one. So 130,000 square foot industry standard is about 260 square feet per 130,000 square feet of rentable gives you your full-time employees, which is roughly about 500. But when I talked to the broker in the market study, they said, look, because the Purple Line and the Metra are there, we would expect this is a true TOD development whereby that number is going to get cut. You're going to have a significant amount of people that are coming from the city, okay, as well, and are going to be able to use the mass transit. So that's how we calculated, and then we work with the city to get the parking count and what have you. So yes, there will be roughly 500 FTEs, roughly. I mean, that all depends on who's coming into the building as well, because that industry standard of 260 square feet per rentable of 130,000, sometimes fluid. So I'm making on the record, it is an approximation, it's rough.
All right. Other questions? All right. With that, I think we'll, Peter?
I have a question for staff, and this may be for the law department, but there's been some talk about the city's contract to sell the property to the developer, and that the contract, or that when the contract was executed, there was it was proposed 11-story building, and there's supposed to be 75 parking spaces for public use, and I'm wondering whether we're supposed to be taking that into account when determining whether to approve this approve this development. If it was a private, I mean, if it wasn't the city of Evanston selling the lot, it would just be a, let's say, private lot that provides parking to the surrounding area for a fee. We wouldn't be talking about the 75 parking spaces or whether it turned from 11 stories to 13. We would just be looking at the development, what's proposed versus what is allowed, and how that affects the surrounding area. So I just want to make sure. I mean, it's my inclination to take into account the 75 spaces being required, but I'm wondering whether that's within our purview, or if that's something that's ultimately going to be determined and decided by the aldermen and the city council.
So who would like to answer that?
Mario Tretto, Deputy City Attorney. With respect to the consideration of the agreement, that's within the jurisdiction of the City Council, so they'll be taking that into account. With respect to the Plan Commission, you would review this as you would any other plan development and looking at the standards that are proposed in the City Code. So really just making sure that while you're reviewing it, you're taking those standards into account and really staying within the jurisdiction of the Plan Commission.
All right. With that, I think we will.
Can I ask one question since I passed on my time? Or is it too late?
I think it's too late. Okay. So with that, I think we will close the public deliberations and go directly to deliberations for the plan commissioners. Is there anything that the commissioners would like to say about this development? Go ahead. Andy, please.
Sure. As you know, I've studied this, since we first saw it. Went through the drawings very carefully, kind of tried to understand what was going on, why it took the form that it did. I asked the question at the last meeting. I'm not convinced that this building has any precedent. It doesn't. I don't understand it, why it looks the way it does. It seems not only are you asking a lot in terms of the setbacks, you're pushing it. I think from 5 to 15, and the height is not a huge stretch, but it is a stretch. I mean, it's going to be significantly taller than its adjacent neighbors. And the look of the building, the facade, I'm just not convinced that it fits or that it's appropriate. I think the setbacks for these terraces are. I'm not quite sure what the payoff is on that. I don't quite understand why they're there. In looking at your plan, the column spacing is it's different from one side to the other, and I don't believe this plan that the building is going to have a rhythm and a module that's going to be consistent from one side to the other as it is drawn, and that's all I can go with. If something's not labeled on the plan, it's not my fault. I'm trying to read these drawings as they're presented, and I'm taking my own time to do so. So, other petitioners follow that rule. When you get a package, I shouldn't have to ask a clarifying question of very, very basic information. I'm glad that on the main floor that you moved the column out of the toilet. That was good, but however, in doing so, now you're creating a transfer beam. And the last time I checked, transfer beams are quite expensive. And I'm not convinced that this is thought through in terms of creating an efficient office plan that justifies the ask, because I don't think the proper due diligence has been done to make this an efficient office building, if that is in fact what the City Council wants to do with this property. So I, for one, I cannot accept this plan as presented tonight.
Commissioner Goddard?
Yeah, I have a different set of problems with this site, with this proposal. We know that the city wants an office building on the site. This is what they asked for proposals. So the city is committed to putting some kind of office building on this site. But when we get a project like this that's asked for a lot of variations, we generally get something back. You know, we get a little park area or a patio, anything that is for the public benefit. And the public benefits that you've listed are like new sidewalks. Well, that's probably going to come with any new development. A bike room. I mean, they're just not meaty enough to offset the variations that you're asking for.
Commissioner Draper, please.
Looking over the traffic studies, I do think that there has been a good case for the use of the alley, that the fire truck has gone through it and they've signed off on it. It is currently parking, so I'm not as concerned about adding parking as part of the structure. So that one I'm feeling more comfortable with. For me, it's the fitting in with the rest of the character on Chicago and not having that side setback, and it's going basically lot to lot. To me, it seems like that will be an issue with these two neighboring properties. A discussion on those trees that are adjacent. It has to do with the root protection area, if those trees can be saved. They probably will not be saved because it's so close to those property lines. If it did have a setback of 15 feet, it is much more likely that you could save those trees. So that's one thing, as well as Commissioner Goddard just said, you know, providing some open space. I think we do need to see something as part of that. I understand that you're trying to make it as efficient as possible, but it is probably a problem with the brief that to try to get as much as parking as you want, you've got to have all these extra levels. I'm just struggling with that personally and thinking how this is going to work. So that's
It's not like you, Commissioner Isaac, not to have a comment.
No, it's not. What I saw originally as the main issue with this proposal was the parking, mainly because where the proposals for 112 total spaces, where what I believe like 213 are required, and you know, in the past we have looked unfavorably at petitioners that have requested such a deviation, especially since I believe we've recently reduced our requirements, at least in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm not convinced that that parking overall, with the inclusion of this building, will be an issue. Mainly because it's a office building and not residential. You know, people that need to get to a job, figure out the most efficient way to do it, and sort of the market figures it out. I am concerned about the effect that that the loss of the open air lot will have on the library and the surrounding businesses. But as we were told, we should leave that out of our, or at least the loss of the parking spaces to the library is really up to the city council, not to us. I'd say this is a pretty tough case. There are pros and cons on either side, and I don't know. I guess that's why you haven't heard much from me, because it's I'm conflicted on it.
All right, thank you. I guess that leaves me. So I have to agree that when I was thinking about this, and going to the site and looking at things, that my initial thought was that I think my issue is with the request for the rezoning. My feeling is that it's appropriately zoned, the R6 district, regardless of the request for an office building. The essential character of Church Street going north through past the university is essentially residential. And although it's contiguous with D3 on the west side, that is also essentially residential development, and of a similar kind of feeling in the R6 area. So I have to tend to agree that it does feel a bit like spot zoning to me, to allow, an office use. I have to say that office use is something that I think Evanston really needs. We're essentially treating our TODs, in my opinion, to be a bedroom community and not a destination. And I think our businesses, especially downtown, could thrive from having office workers here for the lunch trade and all the businesses during the workday. So again, as Commissioner Isaac says, that's the conflicting bit. I just don't think that office on this site is really compatible with the area that is not only residential but also is a row of 3 historically registered buildings. So I think that's really my main points. So if there are no other comments, I'd like to ask that staff pull up the I think there are the requirements, standards for approval that are cited. So of these, would we, I think possibly we should go through at least the high points of these, or they are talked about in the staff report. Is there any objection to the recommendations there? I would definitely like to talk to the 63405 standards for amendments. So I think these were cited by one of the people making public comment, we go through those, whether the proposed amendment is consistent with the goals, objective, and policies of the comprehensive general plan as adopted from time to time in the city council. Is there thoughts on that? I would have to say that if spot zoning or contiguous zoning is an issue, then that's a no, and if, but.
Except the city council asked for it.
Yes, but our charge is if this was a zoning issue. At least that's what legal is said. We're not to consider what city council asked for, and frankly, as a recommending body, I would not like to feel like I'm kowtowing to requests. So I'm just treating this as a zoning issue. So. So two, whether the proposed amendment is compatible with the overall character of the existing development in the immediate vicinity of the subject property. I think that's a issue of that this is primarily residential and that it's a historic, it's within a row of 3 historic properties. So, comment?
Yeah, I would agree that that an office building next to or on that side of the street would be out of character with the existing structures. However, the existing structures, while some of them may have at some time have been residential, they're not currently used as residential. But I take your point and agree that when looking at the street as a whole with the office building there, it would be out of place.
All right. Whether the proposed amendment will have an adverse effect on the value of adjacent properties. I don't know if there's any evidence that's been presented that is factual to that, so I would say that it's acceptable. And the adequacy of public facilities and services has been testified in the staff report. So, the other standards that we're looking at. So it is one of the specific uses specifically responded to in the zoning ordinance. It's in, is it in keeping with the purposes and policies of the adopted comprehensive general plan and zoning ordinances is amended from time to time? I don't
know that it does.
Yeah, I don't know that it does either. It will not cause a negative cumulative effect when its effect is considered in conjunction with the cumulative effect of various special uses and all types on the immediate neighborhood and the effect and purposes of the type of special use upon the city as a whole. I don't believe that it adversely affects the city as a whole. It's the immediate vicinity, so it's not the cumulative effect.
No.
It does not interfere or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. I don't know if I don't think there's been anything presented that it would say that that's the case. It can be adequately served by public facilities. It does not cause undue traffic congestion. There is a report that says that although neighbors are concerned with that traffic is the streets are able to handle it. It preserves significant historic and architectural resources. So it's the intent of that. Is it adjacent properties or the property that it's on? So I don't think it destroys any historic things unless you consider a solar roof something. So I think it actually meets that standard. Yeah. It preserves the significant natural resources, environment, and features. I don't know if that's applicable. It complies with all other applicable regulations in the district in which it is located and other applicable ordinances, except to such extent that the regulations have been modified through the plan development process and the grant of a variation. Well, that's for us to decide, and I think it would meet that if we adopt it. So where do we go from here? Standards for plan development. As a special use, plan development involves such special considerations of the public interest that it shall be required to adhere to the specific plan development standards established in the zoning district in which it is located. Compliance with the standards shall govern the recommendations of the Plan Commission applicable to a plan development and the action of the City Council in order to ensure, well, in short, that if we do consider it rezoned, I think is the interpretation. If we do grant the redistricting, then it would be compliant. Is that the take on that, or?
Except that we're not meeting the parking requirement and we're not meeting the setbacks.
Can you speak into the mics, please?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, we'll
Speak into the microphone, please.
We're not meeting the parking requirement by a long shot, and we're also encroaching the setbacks significantly.
All right.
And if this becomes, let's say, there's nothing to prevent this building from becoming a medical use for doctors' offices, and if that is the fact, like 500 Davis Street, then that's a game changer for parking.
Mm-hmm. Although I doubt that it's got the infrastructure to become medical, which requires significant plumbing and.
Correct.
So,
but that level of detail is really not on the table. But there's nothing to prevent this building from becoming marketed to a medical use.
Right, right. And it does say in the staff report that it is, although it's compatible with the larger downtown area, the staff is stating that the height, bulk, and scale of the proposed project is significantly greater than that of the adjacent landmark properties within an R6 zoning district. So I would say that it is, if it's a binary decision, it's not satisfied, but in general context, it might be satisfied. So with that considered, is there a motion or further thoughts on this? Excuse me, there's another set. Oh.
General.
Yeah. Each plan development shall have insurance of the identity character of the downtown. Possible the greater giving of buildings, enhancing the existing streetscape amenities. Well, we can say that that's met. Each plan development shall be compatible with the implement of the comprehensive general plan as amended. Taxable land, we basically have said that number 3 is met. Each plan development shall be completed within 2 years of the issuance. Well, that's something to be seen. All landscaping treatment within the plan development shall be provided in accordance with the requirements set forth in Chapter 17. Has that been specifically addressed by staff? Does it meet the requirements of Chapter 17? Landscaping with the issues?
Well, it's been reviewed by staff and it's been to DAPR, so
Okay.
that particular aspect, I believe, does.
All right, and I believe I skipped number 1. Each plan development shall be compatible with the surrounding development and not be of such a nature of height, bulk, and scale as to exercise any influence contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinances set forth in section 612, proposed intent. If the proposed plan development for a property listed as an Evanston landmark, or for property located within a historic district listed on the National Register of Historic Places, or property located within a historic district so designated by Evanston Plan Commission, Preservation Commission, the plan development shall be compatible with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. So is, just correct me if I'm wrong, that's addressing simply if it involves a historic property itself, not that it's adjacent. The historic district does not extend to this property, even though it's flanked by it. Okay, so it does meet that standard.
I think it sounds like what it comes down to is whether the downtown district should be extended eastward into this lot. Right, the amendment seems to be the linchpin. From a plan development perspective, the height is big for a downtown building, but not huge. The parking is I would say way off from a plan development perspective, but from the comments that I've heard from the commissioners here, it sounds to me like the biggest issue is whether the lot should be rezoned from residential to a downtown business district. And if we can't get there, then whether it meets the standards for plan development are moot.
Please talk into the microphone, Commissioner Goddard. We'd love to hear what
Well,
you have
that's
to
certainly
say.
one of the factors that we should use, but I'm not sure that's the guiding factor, the only factor.
So I think the point, though, is that Commissioner Isaac's point is that if it is redistricted to D3, it's in essence, extending the downtown density and district further east. And is that something that's desirable or correct? All right. So, any other comments? Is there a motion? Does someone have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I make a motion to deny the approval of this application as presented.
So is it? So just a second. I'm going to ask: is it possible to phrase it positively, and then we'll either deny it or could we? I mean, yeah, I think that might be a better way to do this. No.
You can't make a motion
No?
to approve something that you're not in favor of.
Well, but you okay? All right. So there's a motion to deny the request. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. So I think then we're going to do a voice vote on this. So the answer of a yes vote is a vote for denial, correct? All right.
Okay, Commissioner Pagotzi?
Yes.
Commissioner Isaac?
Yes.
Commissioner Goddard?
Yes.
Commissioner Draper?
Yes.
And Chair Lewis?
No.
So that motion passes. It's a motion to deny.
All right, so that's, the Evanston Plan Commission has made a motion to deny and is going to recommend denial to the City Council for the proposed development at 1740 through 1720 Chicago Avenue. We have one more issue that on the agenda that I neglected to handle in my excitement to get right to this case, which was approval of the minutes of the December 12th meeting regarding this same issue. Are there any comments, amendments, or corrections to the? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
All right. Motioned Isaac, seconded Goddard. We can do this with a voice vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? It's approved unanimously. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Isaac.
Second.
Someone. Goddard. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? All right. It's approved. With that, we are adjourned.